Yes, the recording started. I'm just awaiting confirmation on the live stream. And the live stream has started.
Thank you very much and good morning, everybody. Welcome to Sustainability Committee today, the 19th of August 2026. So as usual, I'll start with the normal housekeeping. So please note that this is a fully virtual meeting with all members and officers attending fully virtually. The meeting will be live streamed and the recording published online for public viewing after the meeting. I think everybody pretty much has activated their cameras, but where possible, please do so. To enable you to join by video, and can I ask you to keep your microphones muted unless you're speaking, and please don't come in unless I invite you to do so. As usual, we'll use the hands up function to get my attention to speak. Thank you. So if anybody loses connection or has any technical issues during the meeting, can you please alert the committee officer, Paige Donovan, by a separate Teams chat message if possible, and support from an IT officer will be made available during the meeting if required. And we'll see how we go, but if necessary, we'll absolutely take a comfort break. And if anybody needs one before I call it, please do alert me to that fact, and I'll be happy to take a break at the end of that item. So let's move on to item 1, which is the Sederant and declaration of members' interests. So Paige, could you please take the Sederant? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. I will go through the Sederant now. Councillor Dickinson, please.
Present.
Councillor Johnston.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Clapper.
Here.
Councillor Owen.
Present.
Councillor Payne.
Present.
Councillor Taylor.
Good morning, I'm here.
Thank you. And Councillor White, please.
Present.
Chair, just to note, we do have apologies from Councillors Gifford with Councillor White substituting and apologies from Councillor Crawley. Therefore, all members are present.
Thank you very much indeed. We'll move on to declaration of members' interests, and I see Councillor Taylor.
Yes. Oh, excuse me. Thank you, Chair. I would like to declare an interest in item 6, Aberdeenshire Fair Trade Zone renewal. My wife Anne is a member of Aberdeenshire Fair Trade Steering Group, and because of that, I'll leave the meeting and take no part in discussions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm also going to do a transparency statement on item 6. Just by virtue of the fact that I am cited on emails from the which Claudia circulates relating to fair trade in my role as chair of the committee, because we've had for that fair trade status. I've also attended very occasional meetings of the Stonehaven Fair Trade Group, but I'm not a member, and I don't consider on application of the objective test that I have any interest to declare. So just a declaration, a transparency statement. So I'm seeing no further hands on that item. Oh, Councillor Johnson. Oh.
Yes, Chair, thank you. I note that other people have made a declaration, declaration to make it clear, but they're not. It's not an important issue. As far as I'd like to do the same in terms of for transparency. I have been a supporter and active in promoting fair trade, but then again, I've also been a supporter and active promoting hundreds of things to do with my ward and the people who live in it. So therefore, I have considered the issue, and I don't think it is of such an item that I need to withdraw, but I will take part. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on now to this statement on equalities. So can I ask you, please, whether in taking decisions on the undernoted items of business within our agenda, in terms of Section 149 of the Equality Act 2010, we will have due regard to the following: to eliminate discrimination, harassment and victimization, to advance equality and opportunity between those who share a protected characteristic and persons who do not share it, and that we will seek to foster good relations between those who share a protected characteristic and persons who do not share it, and that were an integrated impact assessment to be provided, its contents would be taken into consideration when reaching a decision. So can I ask, are we agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. So we'll move on now to item 3, which is the minute of the meeting of the Sustainability Committee of the 20th of May 2026. We have the minute before us to consider whether it's a correct record of that meeting. I would like to highlight one correction that wasn't previously picked up, and that relates to the introduction to the meeting on page 4. Where I spoke about Fisher Moss Primary and it's attributed to Port Lumphanan rather than Port Lethen. So we will make that correction because Fisher Moss Primary is in Port Lethen. But are there any other issues of accuracy that we would need to consider? I'm seeing no hands. So with that change, I take it we're agreed that the minute is a correct record. Thank you. Thank you very much. So we'll move on now to item 4, which is the carbon budget update for 26-27. This is the first update since the carbon budget came before us in February, and the presenting officer for this is Claudia Cowie. So Claudia, if you'd like to introduce the report, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. So this report presents an update from officers from each directorate on the progress of actions in the approved carbon budget for 26-27. Encouraging progress suggests that the budget target of 46,763 tonnes of carbon dioxide equivalent will be achievable. However, a clearer assessment of this will be possible after the completion of the 25-26 Public Bodies Climate Change Duties Report, which will be presented to this committee in November. Estimated emission savings have increased to 2,930 tonnes of carbon dioxide equivalent from the 94 tonnes estimated back in February. Appendix 1 provides a more detailed breakdown of progress against individual carbon budget actions and measures. There has been an increase in the number of asset disposals that have been approved. It's important to note, however, that emission reduction was not the focus of these building closures, but there will be emissions saved from these decisions, which is important to track and add to our carbon budget. Figures have also now become available for projects which were still to be determined back in February. However, the largest saving is coming directly from a reduction in the grid electricity factor for 2026. In the latest figures published by the UK government. Overall, the report demonstrates that work continues across a range of programmes and projects to reduce the Council's carbon emissions, while recognising that sustained effort and continued action will be required to deliver the level of change necessary to meet our longer-term target. The recommendations for this report are set out in 1.2, and I am happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Claudia, for that introduction and for the report that's before us, and to all officers who are contributing to this agenda. So we're being asked to consider and comment on this carbon budget update. So can I ask if there are any questions for Claudia or any comments from the committee? Councillor Cloppert and Nook.
Yeah, good morning again. Thank you, Claudia. And I just wanted to find out about, the reduced electricity emission factor. If you're looking at the total of reductions made and taking into consideration that this factor, that we take that away, how much progress have we made without inclusion of that?
Claudia.
Thank you, Chair. It's a tricky one because the emission factors change on an annual basis, and so we have benefited from the reduction of electricity, the emission factor of the electricity, and that's through the national greening of the grid. It's a reason why sort of the move to electrification for vehicles and for heating systems is being looked at as the sort of future models. It's because that grid is greening. But there has been a few years where the emission factors actually increase, and we've not taken that into consideration when we've reduced our consumption of electricity, but our emissions for electricity actually increased in those years. Not that long ago, actually, there was 2 years where that occurred. So there is a balance between the two, but from our side and our reporting side, we take that as a positive measure going forward as we, an organisation, are moving to are adding to our, I guess, our electricity consumption through vehicles and through things that are happening across our buildings, that we actually want the grid to decrease, because that's the method, or well, the main method of getting to net zero. So it's, if the question is around how do I capture the two, that's very tricky because that emission factor changes on an annual basis across the board. I mean, all of them tend to change. So I wouldn't be able to capture, you know, two different models there to say, well, this is what we've done without the grid electricity factor and this is what we've done with it, because it's all part of the same project essentially.
Councillor
Thank you.
Coppert, you look
Yeah.
like you, yes?
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry, I just had the, so are we almost concentrating now as well on this, because we have so much properties and in our estate, that, you know, are we concentrating on perhaps actually on the electricity emissions? Is that perhaps what I capture here as well?
Well, if we are going to get to net zero by 2045 in our scope 2 emission, which is the electricity emissions, then yes, we are completely reliant on the grid being decarbonised. So we do want that to happen. As an organisation, when we're doing our renewable energy projects, if it's not going straight into the building themselves, for example, it will be feeding into the grid. We're also supporting that work. So it's not a focus. But for last year and for this year, if we're completely honest, the greening of the grid and the reassessing of the emission factor has benefited us as an organisation to reduce our emissions. And that's okay. That's happening across the board. And private sector and public sector are benefiting from that when they're looking at their own targets.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I'll move to Councillor Johnson. Paul.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I read the report. I don't think there's anything in there that suggests that we're not doing what we should be doing and heading in the right direction. I accept Anouk's particular point that we're trying to also, by reporting here in the committee, we're providing information which is supposed to inform the public, if you see what I mean. And it's getting across it. I mean, you have done it fairly well verbally to the committee here as to why, you know, we are benefiting from the greening of the grid. But if I may, rather than a question, make a comment. I've spent a few days thinking about all of the stuff that's coming out now. We don't really need to do this type stuff, which is being promulgated, that we don't require to do the all of this work, and because we will get better, it will be cheaper, etc., by using gas from the North Sea, etc., etc. So we have to go against that. So could we? I'm not sure if we can. I mean, I've got figures from various sources which say how much per kilowatt hour we're getting from different energy sources. But if we're putting a report back about how we're doing ourselves, surely we should actually perhaps consider putting up the figures of the other energy sources which are being suggested are doing better for us than trying to green the grid. Now, it's not Aberdeenshire Council that's trying to green the grid. It is all of us, I suppose. It is at the moment a government objective, but it might not be a government objective. It might be something completely different, is that it may be thought to be cheaper or better in some other ways, that we should be doing different things and not trying to green the grid because it's too expensive for etc. But we need to put the figures of per kilowatt, per 1,000 kilowatt hours, the cost per 1,000 kilowatt hours from different energy sources, which goes into, and in there can be quite clearly put in the example of greening of the grid. It's just one particular point. Could I, if somebody's got another point, could I come back later on? I want to make a separate, rather different point.
Okay, Claudia or Ewan, I don't know if you'd like to comment on what's just been said. I mean, I'm aware that in the past we've had reports before us that explain how much the different sources of fuel that we use and the emissions associated with that, not specifically necessarily, I think, looking at kilowatt hour, the cost and so on. But Claudia, you're looking to come back. Thank you.
Yeah, it was, well, because I was going to refer to the same thing. So in November, when we come with our Public Bodies Climate Change Duties report, that will have our total kilowatt consumption for electricity, gas, oil, biomass, etc., broken down. That sits within the report that is then reported. I am unsure where the energy team would have the costs against all of those. I am unsure if that gets reported to a committee elsewhere, though, if that goes through business services, is that through finance? Oh, Emma Donaldson from the energy team is here, who might be able to come in and help with that one.
Okay, Emma, would you like to contribute, please? Thank you.
Yes, good morning. Apologies, my camera will only switch on if I shut my laptop, which then you can't see me anyway. So yes, we report the figures for energy consumption and energy costs through business services at the end of the year. So the costs are there, the rates are there. As Claudia has mentioned as well, the numbers are provided for the climate change duties as well. I can give you a snapshot of the figures for the end of last year. We are still processing the numbers for 25-26. So for 24-25, the average rate for electricity was 32.7 pence per kilowatt hour, and the average rate for gas was 6 pence. And oil is 6 pence, kerosene is 5.5 pence, biomass was about 7 pence. So we are talking 5 times more expensive for electricity than any other fuel that we use.
Okay.
Yes, and in terms of consumption, we use more gas, oil, kerosene. We use more for heating than we do electricity currently. That won't change very much this year, although we have seen some quite different changes in our consumption this year, which is why we are slightly delayed in publishing, because of the unusually warm weather that we are seeing is knocking down our heating consumption, and we're seeing that coming through in our figures. So we have to be careful how we report that, as how it's interpreted.
Okay, thank you very much, Emma. So I'll bring you back in a moment, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just conscious that we're looking at a report that's focused on our carbon reduction and don't want to get too far away from that, if that's okay. We're picking up your comment and its intent, and we know that we will get a report in November that will bring out more of the detail around the point that you're making, Paul. But if you want to come back very specifically on this issue, you may come back in.
Only to say, of course, I knew that we would have the information there somewhere, and yeah, bang on. That's very good. Thank you very much. And yes, but obviously these figures are going to have to be explained, etc., and that we'll look forward to doing that. My hand is up for a separate issue, so maybe
separate issue. Okay, well, we'll come. In which case, if you're happy for Councillor Taylor to come in, meanwhile, I'll bring in Ian, and thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and it's more a comment than a question, and I appreciate it's probably looking wider than just Aberdeenshire as a council, as an authority, and I appreciate the report is dealing with exactly that. But I'm conscious that in this grade factor, while we as an authority have very little to do in terms of the factors that go into the energy, the carbon emissions from the grid. As a county, we have a huge amount of infrastructure that is ongoing, and the county and our people round about Aberdeenshire carry some of that costs and impact upon their daily lives. The second point I wanted to make was in terms of efficiency. And to my mind, whether it's insulation or driver behaviour, efficiency is key, irrespective of what form of energy you're using. And that efficiency factor will lead to lower emissions. I don't envy anybody's challenge in measuring it, but to my mind, efficiency is key. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ian. Paul, I'll bring you back in. Councillor Johnson.
Yes, thanks very much. We're probably we have a reporting session on the on climate again in November, but I'm conscious of the fact that we're running towards the end of this term of a council, and that the council will be changing. Changes can be quite substantial sometimes, and it will take a while for people, if they decide to have a sustainability committee, the next sustainability committee following the elections May next year will be, it'll take a while for them to bed in and understand what's happening, etc. And there will need to be some move towards summing up what we have done and what in the end of the day is to assess the work that the council as a whole has done and its contribution. Now, may I make a point? When this council session started, nearly 3 years ago, I made the point that there wasn't much that we were going to disagree about the need to do things, but there was one particular thing that we should be measuring ourselves, and this is about our difference that it makes. And it might be an on average difference that we might make, not the absolute, taking an absolute as opposed to, oh, we're not big enough to make any real dent on the things. We're very important internationally, nationally. What we save is what people save, what people are inspired people do. So I think there is something where we need to sum up what we have to do. Now, I made the point then, it was about and asked members if they would remember the number 425, because that's 425 parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere, and we were getting to a particular point in the atmosphere where it would be the possibility of things being completely unpredictable and very dangerous beyond. I don't want to doom scroll, but that is essentially what we're going to be judged on, as to whether we contributed to reducing that or slowing that, and what we could do as a final message to the whole of the council, to the new council at some particular point. But it would be something that we should consider, and that would be to have, as part of a meeting, part of our last meeting, if need be, a summary of where we are, and an ask of the council to debate the issue of continuing the work that we need to do in order to make the difference that would be hold back the CO2 in the atmosphere, as play our role in holding back the CO2 in the atmosphere below 425 parts per million. It's the consequences of not doing so far outweigh anything else that we will ever consider in a meeting like this. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments and suggestion, Paul. Take that away. and you know, take on board the point you're making. I mean, at the minute, our council plan continues to see this whole agenda as being at the heart of the work, sitting within the heart of the work that goes on and the priorities of the council. But I take on board the point you're making and the ask there. So let me take that away. Can I ask if there are any further comments or questions on this particular paper? I'm seeing no hands. For my part, just to acknowledge the work again that has gone on here. It's good to see more information coming forward, us being able to identify areas where there are carbon savings and capturing those. So pleased to see that. Look forward to some of the TBDs being filled in as time goes on. Really good to see the uptick around Warpit. It may be it can seem relatively small in the scheme of things. On the other hand, that's about an attitude, which is really positive to see, that concept of reuse and making sure that we're looking at what previously at some point might have been considered waste as being a resource and an ongoing resource which can benefit others. So that's really positive, and positive to see the you know, we had a carbon budget with 94 tons in it, 262 before we get to the emission grid factor. So some improvement overall in this report, for which again, thank you to everybody who's contributing to that work. And to the work that goes into pulling it together, Claudia, that's appreciated. So we've been asked at 1.2, the recommendations were to consider and comment on the carbon budget 26-27 6-monthly update as attached in Appendix 1, which we've done. And again, note the ongoing responsibility of each director to secure further reductions where possible and to report again in 6 months, and to continue to take reports through the policy committees, where we also have a role, each and every one of us, to ask questions and scrutinise that report. So I'll move on now to item 5, which is the route map to 2030 and beyond progress update. Again, this is a 6-monthly update, and Claudia, you're going to introduce the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this report provides an overview of the Council's progress in delivering the actions set out in the route map to 2030 and beyond action plan, which was agreed by this committee in February in 2024. It also includes the findings of the internal audit report 2527 stage 1 scrutiny review and the additional action plan under this committee's oversight. Appendix 1 provides a high-level summary of progress against the route map, allowing members to clearly see the overall status of actions and the key areas of advancement since the previous reporting period. Appendix 2 contains the detailed action plan update, providing further information on individual actions and any issues affecting the delivery of these remaining actions. Appendix 3 sets out the action plan developed in response to the internal audit scrutiny review. This appendix outlines how the recommendations arising from the audit are being addressed and demonstrates our commitment to strengthening governance, monitoring and reporting arrangements to support the effective delivery of these climate change activities across the Council. There remains only one action, which is in progress. The drafting of the new climate change plan is now underway, and it will be brought to this committee in November for consideration and comments before going to full council in 2027 for approval. The outstanding route map actions will be carried forward into the new 5-year climate change action plan, which will accompany and support the implementation of the climate change plan. Overall, this report provides an assurance that significant work continues across the organisation to deliver the ambitions set out in the route map, while recognising that achieving our longer-term objectives will require continued commitment, partnership working and sustained action over the coming years. The recommendations for this report are set out in 1.2, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much for that introduction. We're being asked here to consider and comment on the progress being made within the route map as laid out in the route map action plan. Also at 1.2.2 to consider and comment on the updated internal audit report 2527, which was on the route map 2030 and beyond. So if I could invite any comments or questions, thank you. Councillor Taylor, Ian.
Yes, thank you, Sarah. Thanks very much. And thank Claudia for this report. My comment and query is in relation to the Appendix 2, items 4.3 and 4.4, the Scope 2 and Scope 3 emissions. I mean, I'm very aware that it won't be an easy task, but I'm glad that some thinking is being developed to assess that particular set of emissions. My question, I suppose, is as a purchaser of goods and services, as a council, do we simply accept, or are we going to need to just accept the figures that suppliers provide? And if they're obviously wrong, or there is a degree of variance, who is at fault? Is it the supplier, or is it would to be the purchaser? And is there any legally binding aspects, enforceable aspects to this? Now, I appreciate it's something that potentially could arise ahead, but I think it's useful to just at least highlight and let us be aware of some of the potential difficulties that may arise.
Claudia, I think that one's for you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Taylor, for that question. So Scope 3 is a really tricky one. At the moment, we report on the areas of Scope 3 that we have information for, data sets for. So that's business travel within the organisation, our water usage and treatment. We do a very high level estimate of home working emissions. And the sort of electricity transmission and losses. Now, those have specific emission factors associated with them that we can utilise and put into our reporting, which you'll see in November. When it comes to the Scope 3 emissions that are looking at what we're purchasing, sort of services or items, that becomes really tricky. We have tried doing that with the procurement service themselves have tried doing that using a particular platform just to get a sort of high level idea, but really what it comes down to is the asks within tenders. So at this point we are waiting for Scottish Government, let me start again. So Environmental Standards Scotland, in their report a few years ago, had highlighted 5 recommendations for local authorities. One of them was that local authorities should report on all Scope 3 emissions going forward. Now, this was the one out of the 5 recommendations that Scottish Government said, no, we don't agree to that one. And so what they've put in place is this sort of investigative work at what that would look like. And Scottish Government had awarded their contract to Aether. I was at a presentation this morning, but unfortunately it wasn't covering us purchasing. It was actually covering the Scope 3 emissions from us selling things, which adds another level of Scope 3 that we would have to look at. So they're essentially what Aether are doing is looking at what does this mean, and then where's the value in it? Like, what value does it bring to us if we have to go down to the nitty-gritty detail of these things? Like, what sort of areas can we actually change and improve in that we could see a reduction? So to try and highlight and focus on the areas that we should focus on as an organisation. So we have taken the decision that we're not going to look at this until the methodology and the guidance from this work from Aether and the Scottish Government is published and available to us, because it will take an enormous amount of work, of which the team is not currently resourced to deliver on, and or have the sort of capability and capacity, if I'm completely honest, in looking at the detail in all of that. So we're waiting for that from Scottish Government to help guide us, because what they're essentially doing is looking at all the different groups and saying, okay, these are the key ones that we think you should report on, and here's how you could go about doing that. Because like you've said, there will be discrepancies within how, if it's things that we're purchasing, what we're purchasing, how they have reported their emissions. At some point, they will have reported those emissions under Scope 1 and 2. So we want to make sure there's not double accounting from scope 3. So there's all sorts of different areas there where we need to take that into consideration. So at the moment, we can focus on what we do have, and we can work on those ones. But from the purchasing side, like I said, we will await that guidance and methodology coming forward.
Councillor Taylor is addressing your question.
It does, and thank Claudia for her explanation. I'm gratified by taking a pragmatic view and realising that we're relying on guidance from elsewhere. But at this stage, happy with Claudia's response. Thank you very much.
Can I just clarify one point on this? My understanding is, though, that within procurement and tendering, climate and sustainability is a factor that is being included. So even if it's just that awareness within that process, even if we can't quite fully document accurately the full implications, we are beginning to see the consideration of these issues through our procurement process, is my understanding.
Correct. And I think we're also looking at support from the Scotland Excel framework that we purchased from, for them to also have guidance in there for the suppliers that are then joining that platform. And I know through officers in procurement who have supported, there's a particular tool that was developed. I can't remember the exact organisation in Edinburgh that did it, but they send that tool to businesses, particularly small to medium enterprise one. It's a free tool that they can then utilise to try and assess some of their own emissions, so that they can include that within their tendering process. So the asks are there. It's just that we're not capturing all of our emissions from what we are purchasing through that process.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, Councillor Owen, I saw your hand go up briefly. I don't know if you do want to come in. It's no longer up. Seeing any response there. Can I ask if there are any further questions or comments on the route map update? Councillor Johnson, Paul.
Thanks very much. Thank you to all the team, and I think Claudia, you put yourself down a little to say that you're not capable of doing some of the things which are being put there. If I was allowed a free hand in a budgetary situation, I would be putting more money in for your team to actually do some of that work. But hey, but I do think you're capable of doing it. The other particular point would like to make, and with all of the I think myself and Anouk and the opposition group have been trying to give you very positive help in terms of ideas and stuff as we've gone forward, and I would just want to know if some of those issues could we go over, as we as councillors would like to make sure that they are fully considered when we come to do the next part of the planning process, and particular things like the valuation of carbon, in order to be able to make rational decisions on whether a carbon reduction in this particular way or that particular way makes more sense. It's about, again, all of former Councillor Ford's Laffer curves and all the rest of it, which we've known about over the years. There are things that we could be doing, and the other one might be, and I think it will be highlighted by the cost of electricity, gas, oil, etc., that we would have in growing our own energy. If you see, like, use a farming analogy, growing our own energy is by far the easiest thing to do in terms of carbon reductions over a longer time frame. And so I do think that we need to again evaluate that as one of the things on the 2050. So all I mean, I think we're at the point of, sort of thinking about what we might need to include, and we'll wonder if we could have either an open joint session or individual group sessions with officers to try to discuss and evaluate what we would need to include from some of the suggestions and things that have come about. Sorry for being long-winded, but I well, that's me naturally, but is to try to round this thing up.
Okay, again, thank you for your suggestions, Paul. I mean, this is your comments are in the context of the fact that we will have a new action plan, which will take account of the climate change plan, all the new guidance. So this is actually the last iteration of this action plan as we know it. What will come forward going forward will be slightly different, and it can perhaps pick up, well, it will pick up what the guidance requires of us, as well as plans that we might have. Again, I think there's scope there to talk off table about this and how we go forward. Claudia, though, do you have any comments on the draft action plan that you'll be pulling together?
So the climate change plan draft will be going to across services in September for input. At the same time, we will have a well, it's not really blank, but a semi-blank action plan associated with that, asking services to, sort of add to that with what they think they are capable of delivering within the next 5-year period. So the action plan will be a 5-year action plan. The overall climate change plan document is meant to be the sort of overarching to take us to 2045. So it's very high level. We want the detail to be sort of in those 5-year action plans. So asking services to think about the sort of forecasting of what budgets might look like, what might be possible, funding streams they might know that's available, and then to start to populate that action plan. It will be a live action plan. It will be probably added to over that 5-year period. So that's the area so those two things will come to Sustainability Committee in November for comments. And at that point, Councillor Johnson, if there was things that you would like to see included, I mean, I don't know how that all works, but that could be discussed. And I'm happy to take forward you're growing your own energy point to property, and also looking at that valuation of carbon and decision making, which I know is being discussed across Scotland at local authority level. How do we go about doing that? So that's one in particular I might take forward with SSN to see if we can run a session on that.
Okay.
Maybe good. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Owen. Gillian.
Morning. Thank you very much. I'm just more interested in the call in by the Internal Audit Committee, and I was just really wanted to find out. I think we've made it very clear that it would be very difficult to do a multi-year plan with costings and funding requirements and all that sort of stuff. But I suppose in some respects that hasn't helped the call-in, because the audit committee obviously still wasn't very happy. So what do you see as the next thing for us to do about that?
Claudia. Or Ewan. I'll
let
bring
you go first.
Thank you.
I sense that Claudia would be quite happy for me to pick this particular question up, Chair. So there's a workshop, as set out in the report, there's a workshop session in the diary for Audit Committee and substitutes next Wednesday. We have started to pull together we're quite well advanced in terms of what that workshop session would look like, and particularly the focus on that one remaining outstanding action that you've just identified there, Councillor Owen, in terms of that fully costed up plan. So I say we've shared some stuff through the team. We're developing that. I've put something to the chair and vice chair previously about here's what we want to get out of it. We want to use that workshop session as proactively as possible. just to get a sense of sharing in more detail as to how where we've got to in terms of the different action points. But then probably the most important point, if you're going to bring and have that workshop type session under the scrutiny model, then we want to say this is the things that we can legitimately do, that we think we have the information on, that we can say, okay, the first 5 years we're going to potentially do more work on things like photovoltaic arrays. What will the procurement model look like that we've just touched on there? What could we legitimately build into contractual requirements that the market can bear? Because that's the trade-off in terms of and we've been there before, Councillor Owen. You'll recall the work that we did on for instance seatbelts in school transport. We timed that so that it didn't cost us significant amounts of money, but we managed to put it into the contractual requirements. So it's knowing the marketplace, and that's where we're very reliant on colleagues across the different directorates. So they're also they'll be in attendance at the workshop session next week, and then we'll see what that output looks like from the scrutiny workshop, and I would hope that that would assist us in terms of then the fine tuning of the next plan that you're going to see as a committee, and also then in terms of what we can really put together in terms of that. Particularly, I think we're nervous about the costings and the long-term nature of the ask, because it's so diverse. There are some parts of the organisation where you could legitimately say, yeah, I think we probably could identify the sorts of things we want to go take on in 5-year chunks. When are we going to replace this? What are we going to do in terms of a particular activity? But this is so diverse, and it's so new in terms of a lot of the things. I think Councillor Johnston's point about how do we get here? That would be a legitimate. Well, that would be something we would always look back at what we achieved, because that will determine then what's the next stages that's going to be built into the plan. So that's next Wednesday. So it's very live in terms of our thinking at the moment. And I say we'll make sure that the outputs from that will be shared then with with Sustainability Committee, and we will use that session to help us form what the plan will look like in the autumn. So.
Thank you very much. Any further comments from yourself, Councillor Owen? Gillian?
Yeah, just if I could just say one. I wasn't at the committee, and I would not have been supportive of this being going to a review, to be perfectly honest, because of the lack of income and that type of thing. But we are where we are, and I look forward to attending as an audit committee member next Wednesday myself. But I hate to say about wasting council time, but I do think this is probably an area that perhaps we should have actually just left as it was and agreed that one outstanding point was probably pretty good, rather than pushing it even further. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Well, we are where we are at this point, and I really hope there's the maximum benefit now from the workshop for everybody who is involved. I suppose I'll just wrap up this item in a moment. We'll come back to the recommendations. I mean, Councillor Johnston touched on the fact that you're a very small committee, Claudia, and I know this is ultimately all the work is council wide. We need to keep stressing that. Everybody carries the responsibility for delivering the route map in some manner, playing their part in taking that forward. But you are a small team. There's a lot of work that still comes back to you, and there's a lot of work that's been done and continues to be done by you. So just to really acknowledge that work that your team and all the people on this call, all the officers on this call are doing towards the achievements that we are having and making. So thank you very much for that. I'll come back to our recommendations, as I'm seeing no further hands. So we were asked to consider and comment on Aberdeenshire Council's progress towards addressing the recommendations as set out in the Route Map to 2030 and beyond through the Route Map Action Plan. We've had that opportunity. And to consider and comment on the updated Internal Audit Report 2527, Route Map 2030 and beyond Stage 1 Scrutiny Action Plan. And again, we've had that opportunity. So those recommendations are discharged. Thank you very much. We have one further paper. I will be guided by the committee as to whether or not you'd like, nevertheless, to take a 10-minute break, or shall we just carry on? If anybody would like a break, can they please indicate? Otherwise, we will continue. Not seeing any hands to take a break, so we will continue, and we'll move to item 6, which is the Aberdeenshire Fair Trade Zone renewal. And Councillor Taylor, you're going to be leaving us. Thank you. And Claudia, again, it's over to you to introduce. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this report seeks the committee's support for the renewal of the Aberdeenshire Fair Trade Zone status and provides an overview of the work that's been undertaken across the area to promote and support fair trade principles. Members will be aware that maintaining Fair Trade Zone status demonstrates Aberdeenshire's ongoing commitment to ethical and sustainable consumption. It also demonstrates the Council's commitment to supporting Scotland as a fair trade nation, which is only possible as long as all 32 local authority areas remain engaged in their commitment. The report outlines the activity carried out by dedicated volunteers from across Aberdeenshire and their communities to meet the fair trade community criteria, including awareness raising, community engagement, partnership working, and the promotion of fair trade products across a range of sectors and organisations. The report highlights the positive contribution that fair trade activity makes towards a number of Council's wider objectives, including sustainability, community engagement, and responsible procurement. It also recognises the valuable support provided by community groups, schools, faith organisations and businesses who have helped to sustain fair trade activity across Aberdeenshire. Appendix 1 provides a summary of the draft renewal application and demonstrates how Aberdeenshire continues to meet the requirements for Fair Trade Zone status. It sets out the evidence gathered against each of the criteria and showcases examples of the work taking place throughout Aberdeenshire to promote fair trade values and encourage participation within local communities. Overall, the report demonstrates that Aberdeenshire continues to show strong commitment to fair trade and that there's a solid foundation of partnership working and community support to justify renewal of our Fair Trade Zone status. The recommendations for this report are set out in 1.2 and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Claudia, for the report and the introduction. So the recommendations before us here are ultimately to agree on behalf of Aberdeenshire Council to commit the Council to its continued support of Fair Trade Zone status in Aberdeenshire, but also to consider and comment on the draft Fair Trade Zone application. So perhaps we'd be considering and commenting first, and then we'll come back to agreeing, hopefully. So can I ask, are there any comments or questions? Councillor White, Judy.
Yes, thank you. Good morning. Yes, really to acknowledge the progress that's been made with this and to see that there is still continuing engagement in the communities around it. I think it's important that we note that this is a facilitating role that the Council plays. The report does state that there is no additional cost to the Council by taking part in it. So it seems to me logical to continue doing that. I did note in the report in the appendix where the questions have been answered that it does recognise some challenges that there is around volunteer capacity and maintaining some of the community engagement. I think that's something that we're seeing across the piece with lots of different organisations, but I think organisations can only do what they can do, and I think to keep going with that sort of support structure around them, the network that exists around it, I think is useful. And I was particularly pleased in question 8 to see that there's going to be some promotion and messaging around fast fashion, local food and global supply chains. I think that local element's really important. Fair trade is also local trade, and anything that helps to reduce travel costs and all sorts of things also helps with emissions. So the messaging around all of that I think is really helpful. So yes, just to sort of acknowledge the work that's happened and support the continuation of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Provost. Apologies, I didn't give you your due title earlier. Can I ask, are there any other comments from around the table? Nope, I'm not seeing any further hands. I would echo what the Provost has just said in terms of you know, the good work being done by groups across Aberdeenshire. I'm aware of that, having a fair trade group in my own community, and that yes, maintaining that volunteer, you know, the throughput of volunteers. It's not easy, but there are really dedicated individuals there who continue to hold it whilst those efforts are made, and we're very grateful to them. And for all the work you do, Claudia, in terms of the, you know, helping to keep everybody in touch and to promote across the piece the activities that are going on. So thank you for that and for putting together the application before us today. So if there are no further comments, I'll take us back to the recommendations, and specifically we are being asked to agree on behalf of Aberdeenshire Council to commit the Council to its continued support of fair trade zone status in Aberdeenshire, and unless I see any hands, otherwise we will take that as agreed. So that is agreed. Thank you very much, everybody, and we have considered and commented on the draft fair trade zone application. So that is also discharged. Thank you to everybody on the call this morning for their contributions, for the work that's gone into the reports and the work that underpins those reports. I can now confirm that the meeting has concluded. Thank you all very much for your attendance and participation. And I'd ask you, Paige, please, to stop the live stream.